Amongst women, I loved those who would be my partners in a sort of game. Hence I played the game. I knew they didn't like one to reveal one's purpose too quickly. First there had to be conversation, fond attentions, as they say. I wasn't worried about speeches, being a lawyer, nor about glances. Having been an amateur actor during my military service, I often changed parts, but it was always the same play. For instance, the little act of incomprehensible attraction, of the mysterious something, of the it's unreasonable, I certainly didn't want to be attracted, I was even tired of love, etc. Always worked, though it's one of the oldest in the repertory. There was also the one of the mysterious happiness no other woman has ever given you. It may be a blind alley perhaps, indeed it surely is, for one cannot cover oneself too much. But it just happens to be unique. Above all, I'd perfected a little speech which was always well received and which I'm sure you will applaud. The essential part of that act lay in the assertion, painful and resigned, that I was nothing, that it was not worth getting involved with me, that my life was elsewhere and not related to everyday happiness, a happiness that maybe I should have preferred to anything, but there you were, it was too late. As to the reasons behind this decisive lateness, I maintain secrecy, knowing that it is always better to go to bed with a mystery. In a way, moreover, I believed what I said. I was living my part. It's not surprising that my partners likewise began to tread the boards enthusiastically. The most sensitive among them tried to understand me, and that effort led to a sort of abandoned melancholy. The others, satisfied to note that I was respecting the rules of the game and had the tactfulness to talk before acting, progressed without delay to the realities. This meant I had won, and twice over, since beside the desire I felt for them, I was satisfying the love I bore myself by proving my special powers on each occasion. This was so much so that even if some among them provided but slight pleasure, I nevertheless tried to resume relations with them at long intervals, helped doubtless by that strange desire which absence fonders when it is followed by the sudden rediscovery of an involvement, but also to verify the fact that our ties still held and that it was my privilege alone to tighten them. Sometimes I went so far as to make them swear not to give themselves to any other man, in order to quiet my worries once and for all on that score. My heart, however, played no part in that worry, nor even my imagination. A certain type of pretension was in fact so personified in me that it was hard for me to imagine, despite the facts, that a woman who had once been mine could ever belong to another. But the oath they swore to me liberated me while it bound them. As soon as I knew they would never belong to anyone else, I could make up my mind to break off, which otherwise was almost impossible for me. As far as they were concerned, I had proved my point once and for all and assured my power for a long time. Strange, isn't it? But that's the way it was, mon cher compatriote. Some cry, love me, others don't love me, but a certain genus, the worst and most unhappy, cries, don't love me and be faithful to me. Except that the proof is never definite, after all. One has to begin again with each new person. As a result of beginning over and over again, one gets into the habit. Soon the speech comes without thinking, and the reflex follows. And one day you find yourself taking without really desiring. Believe me, for certain men at least, not taking what one doesn't desire is the hardest thing in the world. This is what happened eventually, and there's no point in telling you who she was, except that without really stirring me, she had attracted me by her passive, avid manner. Frankly, it was a shabby experience, as I should have expected. But I never had any complexes and soon forgot a person whom I didn't see again. I thought she hadn't noticed anything and didn't even imagine she could have an opinion. Besides, her passive manner cut her off from the world in my eyes. A few weeks later, however, I learned that she had related my deficiencies to a third person. At once I felt as if I had been somewhat deceived. She wasn't so passive as I had thought, and she didn't lack judgment. Then I shrugged my shoulders and pretended to laugh. I even laughed outright. Clearly the incident was unimportant. If there's any realm in which modesty ought to be the rule, isn't it sex, with all the unforeseeable there is in that? But no, each of us tries to show up to advantage, even in solitude. Despite having shrugged my shoulders, what was my behaviour, in fact? I saw that woman again a little later, and did everything necessary to charm her and really take her back. It was not very difficult, for they don't like either to end on a failure. From that moment onwards, without really intending it, I began in fact to mortify her in every way. I would give her up and take her back, force her to give herself at inappropriate times and in inappropriate places, treat her so brutally in every respect that eventually I attached myself to her as I imagine the jailer is bound to his prisoner. And this kept up till the day when, in the violent disorder of painful and constrained pleasure, she paid a tribute aloud to what was enslaving her. That very day I began to move away from her. I've forgotten her since.